All right.
All right. Well, hi everybody. Rufus Haucke from Keewaydin Farms. I've been growing organic produce for 20 seasons now on the farm I grew up on in Southwest Wisconsin. And as a side gig, I do some shipping. Back in the day, I ran a food hub for a little while. That would be 2007 through I think 13. And so did a whole bunch of aggregation and distribution. And since then, I've sort of dabbled in it, and I'm hoping to do a bunch more in the future. Is that it? Did I get everything?
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
All
And
right.
then Shawn, if you want to go next, please.
Howdy, folks. I'm Shawn Bartholomew with Chippewa Valley Produce. We've been farming, I don't know how many years, 17, 18-ish years. We've been doing aggregation for probably 7 or 8, maybe 9 of those years, hard to say. We're located in Elk Mound, Wisconsin. So most of the growers we work with are from this area, from Western Wisconsin, but we deliver on for the most part, the western side of the state from Superior all the way down to south of Madison, like Dodgeville and that area. So, and all the way over to like Viroqua and not quite La Crosse yet, but almost.
Great, thank you. And then Heather.
Yeah, I'm Heather Toman. I am a co-owner of Full Circle Community Farm in Seymour, Wisconsin, and I manage Slow Farmers Co-op here in Southeast Wisconsin. So we've been aggregating as a co-op since 2014. I came in as we were starting our farm in beginning of 2018 and started participating in the co-op part of the aggregation pretty quickly, but moved into a bigger role as the years went by, like maybe 2019 as more management.
Great, thank you. And then Sheri.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Sheri Howard. I'm the co-owner and general manager for Seasonal Harvest. We are an aggregator, a pass-through aggregator serving Northeast Wisconsin, and we do primarily located in the Green Bay area. Work very closely with Heather and Full Circle and Slow Farmers Co-op. We got started in 2018. I have one partner, Darren Volmer from Ledgeview Gardens, and we have one part-time employee that handles the weekly gathering of availability and sales. Very small, tight, lean operation, focusing mostly on the schools and the Green Bay Packers.
Great, thank you so much. So next I wanted to go an overview of the agenda. So I'm just want to do a quick overview of the Wisconsin LFPA program, and then we'll go right into the questions and answers. So I have a few that I'll get started, some questions, and we'll give them to all the panelists, and then want to open it up to everybody else for a while to answer some or to ask some questions for our panelists. So the Wisconsin LFPA program, we are in our second year, and Wisconsin LFPA program is strengthening food and agricultural supply chain resiliency. It's supporting Wisconsin farmers and distributing fresh, nutritious foods to underserved communities. So I will say that Rufus, Heather, and Shawn are all producers under the Wisconsin LFPA program for this season, with going into this year. So it's been really awesome to work with them in that capacity, and looking forward to them providing lots of great food into the LFPA program for year 2. So this we're putting on this workshop or this webinar today to share with how they've added aggregation and distribution into their how they've had it in the past and how they continue to work with it, and especially focusing on that farm to food access where they, Shawn and Heather and Sheri have been participating in the Wisconsin LFPA program as subcontractors to help move that food from the farms to the food access programs we're working with WILFPA. So I will get the questions going. So let me stop sharing there and bring those up. So for our panelists, whoever wants to get started, we'll do like a snake. So whoever starts, the last person to answer the question will answer the second question first. So we'll get this all started here. So the first one is just what inspired you to start offering aggregation and distribution services? And a follow-up to that is what market needs or gaps did you identify that led to that decision? So whoever wants to get started there. And I'll throw them in the chat as well as we go.
I'll start. So we started in 2018 really out of need to try to get our way into the wholesale market where the individual farms often are not producing enough, don't have enough contacts or the time to work in the wholesale market. Together, we were able to pull enough food together for some schools and for the packers to begin aggregating on a weekly basis. And so we don't farm ourselves. Seasonal Harvest is not a farm. We are just a true aggregator, and it was the coming together of 3 or 4 farms and offering our products collectively.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can go next. So we used to grow produce for the farmers market, and then we expanded to the CSAs. And when we were doing a CSA, community supported agriculture, we quickly realized that we are not good at growing some things. So at that point, we started to do more of a community CSA, and that's when our aggregation started. And then from there, we started offering that extra product into our wholesale markets because we were also selling into restaurants, and it just continued to grow from there. It's taken a long time to get to this point where we are today, but it was worth it, I think. So the gaps that we saw are a lot of the like farmers market vendors that we worked with or still work with, I guess. They don't have a lot of infrastructure like coolers, vegetable washers, or even trucks to haul stuff. So when we started working together, we started providing those things: cooler space, vegetable washer. So we were just filling the gap while we were selling the product. I mean, that's still how we operate today, is more of a community supported aggregator instead of agriculture. And that's kind of how we've seen it. Is when we started, we thought we had to do everything on our own, right? And then we quickly realized when we started working with other people that we don't have to do this on our own. We're not alone, and we can work better together. So those are some of the gaps that we saw that we needed to fill. And then I took a role at DATCAP, developing the produce safety section. And then I saw the need for food safety. So now we do food safety trainings. We got a specialty crop block grant in Wisconsin to do food safety trainings for the growers that we work with. That was the last gap we saw, was food safety. So just trying to build capacity with the growers we work with.
Okay, and then for me, I guess I feel like we're definitely a combination of both Shawn and Sheri as far as the evolution of what makes sense for gathering product together from multiple small farms to be able to sell it more easily, really, for the farmers. And I feel like that's maybe the additional thing that was a motivation to keep going with it and everything, and is to get to a point where the farmers can focus on the farming part and not the selling part. So that the co-op has enough capacity to run on its own as far as doing that work. And I really like what you said, community supported aggregator. That was a really good little quip on it, because that's totally what it is. It's a community effort, and we really took the focus to CSA and aggregating for our CSA, and our farm became pretty much the biggest in the co-op. So we started aggregating at our facility because we built a pack shed that we could actually pack the CSA boxes. So then most everyone would deliver to us, and we'd pack everything in the CSA, and for some wholesale that goes out.
All right. Well, way back in 2004, when I first moved back into the area, I had my CDL, and I drove for a farm, Avalanche Organics, which doesn't exist anymore, but they were 60 acres of produce, had quite an extensive market up in the Twin Cities and Madison area, bundling stuff into Chicago. They unfortunately went out of business. They were kind of in a floodplain, and I had driven for them for a couple years, and so I knew all the buyers. I knew, the product line. I had a good idea of pricing. And of course, while I was driving, I was doing all that research, looking at the store shelves, shaking hands, because I had a farm of my own, and I ultimately wanted to do my own farming. And so, but they had, I think by the time they were done, they were about $600,000 or $700,000 worth of produce that they were slinging. And I knew I wasn't going to grow that. My kind of dream or whatever was maybe 5 acres of produce. So, the opportunity was pretty obvious. And we also live in an area where there's quite a bit of produce grown in this area. A lot of Amish growers, that obviously don't have the infrastructure to get it to market. And so in 2007, I started an aggregation business called Just Local Foods. And over the course of a couple of years, we ended up working with about 100 and some different farms. Sometimes it would be just one product. So we had a guy out there, like going to every farm every day. And then we had local routes we were running to pick stuff up. And at our peak, we were running to Minneapolis and Chicago and Milwaukee and Madison. We had a couple trucks. It was totally insane. And it was definitely a young man's business. But I loved it. I don't know. I love meeting farmers. I love being around food. I love the logistical challenge of trying to get it to market, and I'm not sure why I love it, because a lot of that stuff is, I don't know, it's really insane. I mean, just a few like snippets of insanity would be like getting pulled over by DOT with a truck full of produce heading up to Minneapolis and being taken off the road, and trying to figure out what to do there. I mean, things like broken down trucks, producers that don't have their order together when you're there to pick it up, and you've got 30 other people to pick up. It can be a nightmare, but the biggest thing is like the market was there in 2007, like the local food market. That was kind of the next buzzword, local food. We were organic producers, so we had that buzzword going for us, but we could see the local food thing becoming a thing, and I just felt like it was a great business opportunity. And I think in the end it probably was, but I didn't really, I made all the mistakes that you can make. And so at a certain point I had to like really pull back on it. But I have that base of knowledge still in me, and I still have a lot of contacts with different producers. And I feel like we're in another up cycle. I know we talked before everybody got on about, where the future is, but I feel like there's a bit of an upcycle here as far as people coming to a market again. And I feel like it behooves all of us to set up a good logistical system so that we can compete with Cisco's and Reinhardt's, and not that we ever will, but ultimately, like my hope and dream was when I was putting this together is that I would have some sort of local 100% local based list that would be similar to what Cisco would what Cisco's salespeople can walk into a place and offer, but it just be local. And that was what I was building. And you know, at our peak, we had hundreds of product that we were offering. We had a kitchen, we had all kinds of fun, crazy stuff going on. So anyway, that's what I saw.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So the next question, and it's probably, you know, something that's on a lot of people's minds here as they join the call, is how did you finance the initial setup costs for these additional operations for your business? And we'll go opposite order then. So Rufus, if you want to just keep going
Yeah,
on that one.
so originally I funded it, you know, with just through cash flow. I will say I didn't. So I had a markup, you know, I'd buy product from farmers, and I would put a markup or margin or whatever the heck you want to call it. When I first started, I was operating at about, I think I was operating at 10%, which was way, way, way too low. And I was also just bringing product in without it being ordered. So I made some pretty crucial missteps right in the beginning. My margin should have been way higher. But you know, I was kind of trying to do a good thing, I guess, right? Like help out the farmers. Let's see. Sorry, I got a little off. But then my second year, I met a venture capitalist, and he put some money into the business, which was again another mistake that I made. It's hard to turn down like 30 some $1,000s worth of money, but it came with a lot of strings attached and a person that wasn't really knowledgeable about the business, and so it ended up costing me. But yeah, that was initially personal funding, and then venture capital, and then we got some loans through banks too to purchase some equipment.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Heather.
Yeah, so we definitely have been bootstrapping it. And, you know, as a co-op, it's all the farms putting in the time to make decisions, and then, you know, hiring someone to do the logistics and the bookkeeping and everything, with using the markup or the margin that we were putting on the product. And we definitely were doing, you know, based on orders. So we weren't holding any product as far as the vegetables. But one thing that has made it difficult is that we got a grant for doing meat boxes. So in order to, you know, do like box sales to direct to customers, like a CSA for meat, we did hold inventory of meat. We bought whole animals, and we thought that would be a good way to, you know, make more of a profit from it rather than relying on the farms to have all the cuts that we needed. We would just get the whole animal, but that meant that you have to hold inventory, which is a definite expense and has been hard on us to get kind of out of that hole of what we owe because of that. So that has been a difficulty. But yeah, a combination of grants and the markup and things like that and just like contribution of the farmers.
Sure. Thank you. Shawn.
Well, with our CSA, I mean, that's paid up front. So when we were aggregating there, we were able just to buy the product as it came in, but we would only take in what we needed for that CSA box. And we did have a cargo van that we bought, and so that's how we would deliver. And then when we scaled up to refrigerated trucks, the first probably 2 years, we actually would just rent a truck 1 day a week, and I would literally drive for 24 hours, like I would wake up, I would like 3 in the morning, I would start driving and I wouldn't get back home till the next night. And I would go drop the truck off. Um, but I also work at the Wisconsin Farmers Union. So if you want to become a member, get a hold of me. But my wife also has a full-time job. We grow produce. We have a property management company. So let's just say we financed the way we are with not spending money, taking all the money we make, sticking it back into our operation, working 90 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, not going on vacation for 6 years. Yeah, I mean, we were young. I'm not young anymore, but that's basically how we've gotten to the point where we are today. And we never had a warehouse, like in the sense of like Cisco warehouse. We've had my shop where I keep my tools and my car and my tractor. And then in the summer, we pull all that stuff out and we have our pack shed shop. And that's just how we did it. And then we built a lean-to, and then our coolers went outside. Our vegetable washer went outside. So then we could keep the shop. We apply for every single grant that we can possibly find. So in the spare time, which I don't know where that is, we apply for grants. And let's see, how else did we finance it? No loans. We have a mortgage on our property. Just as anyone else does. But no equipment loans, no operating loans. And like when we take product in, we expect when we deliver it that same day, we still operate that way. We expect our buyers to pay within 14 days. So then we can pay the grower when we get paid. So we're still not buying that inventory. We still just keep it a rotating account that sometimes looks like I have money, and then the next day it looks like I have no money. I mean, you do this because you love it, and you want to help your community. You don't do this to get rich.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn. And then Sheri?
Well, you're probably going to hear a theme here. It's a labor of love. It's something we do really to benefit the farms first and then the community, with a goal of making sure that we keep as many small farms in business as possible by offering another stream of income, and that is wholesale. We started in 2018 with $1,000. And my first year, I was a retired businesswoman. So I had, fortunately, my husband was still working. My first year was owner equity. And because I had a background in business, that was my job to get it up and running. But my partner, Darren, offered up a section of his farm, the cooler and the staging area. And a couple of our farms have trucks, cold trucks, and we paid them mileage and driver time to do our delivering for us. So we just started our 6th year. We have no debt. We have no assets. We have one part-time person, and we did just under 750,000 gross revenue last year. And we were running at a 10% margin until this year we bumped up to 12. So our goal is really not for seasonal harvest to be, whirlwind profits, because Darren and I have to pay taxes on that profit. We invest in the infrastructure every year that we can pay more farms to use their trucks so they're running full both ways. But that $1,000 bought us LegalZoom to get our business documents. We use all the free Google forms. In fact, we still use Google Sheets and Google Forms for our order processing. QuickBooks, probably our biggest ongoing expense. We have QuickBooks Online to run not only our accounting, but our pack slips. We are now getting our very first website after 6 years. We didn't need it. That wasn't going to be the way that we got business. And we invested our time in networking in the community, getting that good relationship. I would have to say our biggest hurdle and our biggest success has been getting the farms and the farms and the schools to understand how they can work together. The schools got a lot of money over the last few years in an all number of grants to buy local. The problem is they didn't have the connections. They don't do scratch cooking. They don't have a lot of processing equipment. So, and then you've got the farms on the other side who are all growing about the same thing, tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and all this stuff that isn't ready to eat. And so we found we had a huge disconnect there. And by getting the schools to understand to buy seasonally and menu plan seasonally, and the farmers to just change their varieties a little bit to start offering a little bit more kid friendly. Put some short cucumbers in there, some lunchbox peppers and cherry tomatoes, and meet in the middle somewhere. We've been able to move forward with selling more and more food into the schools. And because they had all this funding, that became our mechanism for moving forward. That became our foundation. And we are a lean operation. We also don't buy in. We let the farms know on Friday what of their produce sold. They have until Monday morning to get it over to Darren's place, and Monday at 8 the trucks get loaded, it's gone. We don't buy in anything.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. So yeah, definitely saw a theme there. It's you know, a lot of work to get it started, a lot of creativity, I would say, and I think that's awesome to see. So this next question and is so when thinking about selling into food pantries, into food banks, into other food access programs, what opportunities exist when selling into that market, and then what challenges exist? So what opportunities and challenges exist in the farm to food access market? And Sheri, you can, you know, talk about schools with that. You were talking about that a little bit, but if there's anything you want to expand on with that market.
Well, we also partner with a nonprofit organization called Wello, who is a community-based wellness organization that is an amazing fundraiser. And that partnership with them has saved us from having to do all the grant work ourselves. That funding is what brings in the food. Whatever grants we get, we're using for infrastructure. So it's a great partnership. And they have the relationships with all the community centers and the smaller pantries. And so we are the food arm of their wellness plan, if that makes sense. So for LFPA, Wello got the LFPA partnership, community partnership grant, and between Heather, Slow Farmers, and Seasonal Harvest, we are the providers of that food. So it's two stops rather than finding a bunch of small farmers. It's been a great collaboration. But I think your biggest challenge is also going to be getting all of your farmers to standardize somewhat on your packaging, your size. So you're getting all zucchini this big, not the big monster uh, zucchini bread. So that education has really fallen on, well, Marble Seed helps with some of that, but we have to do individual training on any new farms that come in so that we can provide that standard to the wholesale market.
Great. Thank you. And then Shawn?
Farm to food access.
Yeah,
I mean,
opportunities and yeah.
yeah, that's a total relationship, right? So the food pantries we do work with, it's not a one-way road at all. It's not, Shawn, we want to buy produce. It's, hey, we have produce to donate this week. We grew too much. This farmer has some. It's about that relationship of give and take. That's how we've made those successful. Same with, working with the farmers. Hey, we want you to get into wholesale markets. What do you need? How can we support you? And I think just being a good community supporter for the things you want to see thrive is how we've built those relationships and been able to maintain them. Food access is also, largely revolving around government funding. So as different administrations come through, you see different levels of things and different opportunities, and COVID brought more opportunities to build relationships. And I think a lot of it too is not just like expecting a sale today. It's about just planting that seed for tomorrow and not forcing things. We've just let relationships grow organically. If something's going to work, it's going to work. If we force it, it's probably not going to work, and it's probably not the right situation. There is a lot of opportunities, but those opportunities also come with the people in those positions. When those people leave those positions, a lot of times those opportunities change. It's just like a restaurant. When the chef leaves, you lost that sale. You might think you're still selling to them, but you have the old chef's email. So I think there is a lot of opportunity, but it takes time and it takes relationship building and it takes a lot of patience. And that's what I think's been successful for us, is not forcing, just let things happen as it does.
Awesome. Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, I would say we don't have that much experience, except for recently now with LFPA grant that multiple of the farms in Slow Farmers Co-op got last year and again this year, that are going to pantries, and then now working with, and then also what we've sold through seasonal to schools, and now the LFPA community partner grant that we have with Wello and seasonal we're bringing the meat portion of these boxes that we're providing to these community centers in our area.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Rufus?
Well, I'm a glass half full guy. Does that mean I'm an optimist? Yeah, I think so. So I think opportunity is always around the corner. And I think that when, we're talking about food, we're in such a unique business in the sense that everybody still has to eat. The pill isn't, the meal in a pill isn't quite there yet. Maybe it'll be there someday. But I think that allows us that opportunity to really deal with the product that, there is a market for. And I think, the challenge, of course, is that you have to, if you're going to do this distribution, you probably have to get rid of the idea that you're going to do it all. Okay, because you can't. There's no way you can do it all. You have to, I think probably, one of the things that we maybe did right in the beginning is that we did have this separation between the person that I had out in the field talking to the farmers and then a separate person selling stuff. And I think, that was probably pretty good in the sense that we were able to identify more opportunities of product to sell, and we were able to keep on our customers, like when that chef did disappear, we got on the horn right away and found out who the new one is. And, yeah, Shawn, I think that's a great point, because I think, oftentimes if you're just a single farmer, you have your contacts and then you kind of disappear in the field, and, you never know why some business stops ordering from you unless you're constantly on the horn with your customers. And so that is its own thing, having a salesperson. I think one of the things that I ran into in the past, and I don't know if there is a solution to it, or maybe it's just the nature of capitalism or something, but there was a lot of I think one thing to be conscious of, and if you do start a distribution business, is who's already out there, and can you fit into existing infrastructure, or do you not? And I think, you know, at least back in the day, there was a lot of cannibalizing of customers and product and growers. And, you know, I probably did a little bit of that myself, you know, um, and so at a certain point, you know, different aggregators are getting product from the same farms. They're possibly trying to sell to the same customers that same product. And, you know, that the only thing that happens there is that, you know, now we're competing on price, and usually that means it's a downward trend. Um, the other thing I ran into as I was growing the business is I started to distribute to bigger businesses, and I found that that was a really vulnerable place to be. I found that the bigger I got, the more sketchy the customers became in their ability to pay or their timeliness of payment, or receiving of product. You know, like if you get into some of these bigger grocery store chains, for instance, I mean, they have an amazing amount of infrastructure to separate you from the product. And I mean, I won't name companies because that's not where we're at right now, but we had situations where we would deliver pallets of produce to certain grocery chains, and, you know, somehow, some way, the product got lost. And that happened several times. And we're talking pallets of stuff, which, you know, as you can imagine from what these other folks are saying, you know, like the margins are not big enough to lose that product, you know. And so as I got bigger, that was definitely something that really hit me hard. And in the end, when I decided to back off and do a little bit less, you know, I just shucked all those crappy customers. And you know, now I'm very, very conscious of the customers I have. And it's not that I'm out there to get every customer, but I want to have good relationships with customers that get what we're trying to do. And maybe that'll limit your growth, but you know, if you're not getting paid for product that you send out, you're gonna just fall flat on your face really fast. And so, yeah, that's what I gotta say about that.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, at this time, I'd like to open it up for questions from all the participants. So before that, Shawn, do you want to give a summary of the question that Catherine asked and just your understanding of that?
Yeah, no problem. Catherine was just asking about a wholesale food handler license that they have in Minnesota, and if we have one in Wisconsin. The answer is no, we don't. If you don't hold produce for 24 hours, you do not need any license. The USDA does want you to have a Haucke license, which is $1,000 a year, but that's not DAT cap. So when you hold produce for 24 hours or longer, they want you to have a warehouse license. But if you're getting a warehouse license, you might as well just get a processing plant license, because then you have the ability to chop stuff and it's the same requirements. And then the other license we have in Wisconsin is a meat distributor license, which is, we'll just call it a silly one. They come and do an inspection. They look at your freezer, which can be a deep freezer, and the vehicle you're hauling stuff in the cooler. So you can literally have a deep freezer with a van and a cooler, and you will get a meat distributor license. And then you just have to pay the fee every year, or it's a free one. That's free. You just have to renew it every year. We don't even sell meat right now, but yeah, I did just get my notice. So I'm going to fill it out and turn it in. So DATCAP in Wisconsin, DATCAP is the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. In my opinion, is very friendly to aggregation businesses, and like working with them to get a warehouse license if you want to start storing other people's produce, and also in a processing plant license. Jean Finger is the section chief in manufactured foods. She's been in this industry for I couldn't even tell you how long. Troy Spreckers, the bureau director, great guy. Steve Ingham used to be the division administrator, who previously was at Extension and did a lot of research in produce and bovine manure. They're all great people. You just don't have to be afraid to reach out. Like, I think the resources are there, and not to mention the produce safety section at DATCAP. I don't think they're as valuable as some of the others, even though I was there. But they still can provide a lot of great resources for you around food safety. They can come out and do an on-farm readiness review. I believe they're still doing those for the next year or two. I'm not sure how long. But there's opportunities there to help for you to gain the knowledge to enter markets. And then they also still have a cost share for the USDA GAP program. I think it covers 50% of the cost. So TACAP is a regulatory agency. Don't be afraid. They are good. Like, they want to see more food businesses in the state. They're not out there just to like come down on you. That's my experiences with them. It's been, April's from DACAP and she's great. So I think in Katie, yeah, it's a good place. A lot of great resources.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that one. So please feel free to throw questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll get a queue going. But one that came through, and this, feel free, anybody now can jump in, of our panelists. But how do you manage pricing to get your fair share and have a fair price for both customers and farm suppliers?
I can take that first take.
Sure.
So we started with a collective discussion on what was the fair price to the grower. And we recognize that we're squeezed a little bit by the farmer's market, kind of being the high end price. We decided to set what we considered our fair pricing among the vendors, and we collectively decide when it's time to do an increase. And we did our first increase actually in 5 years recently. So everyone who comes in gets a list of what we pay, and they don't have to sell every single product. If they really feel they can get a better price somewhere else, it's completely optional. And then we set our margin to get to our customer's pricing point. And we did that by looking at what we needed to operate. So what was the minimum we needed to run our business? That's how we came up with our originally 10%. We felt we could stay within that, always being conscious that as a wholesaler, we can't have prices that are higher than people can go to the farmer's market and purchase produce. So there is a bit of a squeeze, and you really need to look at your expenses. It's half of your equation of profit, expense and income, and decide, what's the minimum you can make, and just keep your operating expenses as low as possible, so that most of the money can go back to the farmers.
Thank you. Any of other panelists want to take that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Or Shawn, go ahead if you want. Okay. I think this is such an interesting dance, really. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I started off pretty small, and I appreciate what Sheri's saying too. I definitely had a different approach. I was and I'm still, fixated by the capitalist idea of being my own boss and being in charge of everything. And so when I first started, I was operating on a 10% or so margin markup, and that wasn't enough for the infrastructure that I had and wanted to put in place. And so by the time I was done, and I wish I probably would have started at where I ended, but I was trying to hit about 40%. Was the margin I was trying to hit. But we had multiple trucks on the road. We have big coolers we're running. We were in a facility that we didn't have control over the rent either. So we were sort of trying to keep pace with our expenses by, moving up our margin. But really, I think we should have started somewhere around there. And then, as I think well, it's so interesting because like in the normal market, like in produce, when the produce season is happening, everywhere else the prices are fluctuating based on, so you can go to like terminal markets and you can look and see what pricings, there's terminal markets all over the country, and you can kind of get pricing reports from those markets. Those have almost zero bearing on what, your markets are going to give you, but it's a place to start. The other thing I would do for pricing is I would go to our customers, like the stores, and I would look and see what their price was on the shelves. Oftentimes, like if you're selling to a grocery or something, they're operating, I want to say, on 100% markup. And so you could, just work back from the store shelf price. And then I think, as far as the farm side goes, as a farmer, I think you need to be cognizant of the fact that like when your green curly kale comes into season, guess what? Everybody's green curly kale is in season, including green curly kale coming from Mexico, California, all over the place. And so, if this is where season extensions can be beneficial on the farm side, but if you're expecting on the farm side to get $30 a case for your in-season kale, good luck. I just don't think, yeah, you might have a couple good customers that'll pay you that, but like oftentimes, we're sending kale in multiple directions and we're getting multiple prices for it. Let's say anywhere from $12 for a 24 count case to $38 for a 24 count case. And it just depends on what customer we're sending it to. And in the end, it's up to us to, that price averaging out for the farm to have a price that averages out to something they can work with. But I did, especially in the beginning, I ran into farms who would hold really strong to a price, and then we wouldn't move any of their products. So I think, like the classic example for me was I had a farmer who had, I think he had like 7 or 8 bins, like 800-pound bins full of celeriac, and he was just like really, really adamant about sticking to a price that he needed to get, and I couldn't sell it for that price, and he ended up dumping most of those bins. And so I think as a farmer, it's I know I would love to get $38 a case for kale all the time, but I would almost much rather move it than to sit on it, because you put all that work into growing it. And if you don't move it, especially in the produce game, you have days, to move something. And if you don't move it, then you're zeroing it out big time. And so, it's a complicated dance. And I think, the only thing you can really do is just keep in good communication with your growers, with your buyers, and try to get the best price you can. And try to help your growers understand that, like, are you better off moving it or just plowing it in? I mean, sometimes it's, I guess, maybe better to plow it in, but and that speaks back to having those relationships with people that, and trying to be as transparent and all that stuff. It's all those communications that you can on both ends.
Great, thank you. So if there's, please feel free to throw any other questions up, but I'll go back to some that I had.
Terry?
Yep.
Can I add one more piece to that? Because
Yeah,
Rufus
absolutely.
brought up some really good points there that I kind of want to just say as a general. If you're just starting out or you're new in this,
Sheri, can you hold on one second? I'm sorry. We're getting some feedback on it. I don't know if everyone else is getting that too. But maybe try again. It was kind of some feedback when you're speaking there.
Okay. Is it better now?
No, but I think we can probably go with it.
Let me try moving here. I got a heating vent behind me. Is that any better?
I think it's something with maybe with the computer, but it's like static.
Okay.
Staticky.
Yeah, don't know. It's been good up till now. I'll try moving aside a little bit. So one of the things I want to just point out, if you're getting in this business, when you first get started, you're grabbing for customers. You really, it's great. I got this restaurant, I got this school, I got this community center. But you really have to think about the markets that you're entering. If you go into retail and you go into restaurants, you have to realize that they are trying to make money off their food. And so they are committed to getting food at the lowest possible price because they're going to turn around and mark it up. If you go into something like a pantry, a community center, a school, they're not in the business of making money on food. Their purchasing is also much more stable. They want their deliveries on Monday morning, right? Schools, community centers, they operate primarily through the week, whereas restaurants typically want Friday deliveries. And depending on how busy they are, their order volume fluctuates tremendously. From anywhere from, yeah, we'll get a case of tomatoes this week, and next week maybe we'll get 300. So our experience has always been they're diametrically opposed when it comes to management. And we chose to move away from the restaurants and the retail, we have a couple, because we wanted that stable market. We wanted to deliver on Mondays. We didn't want to do multiple deliveries during the week. We weren't set up to do that. And nobody was looking for us to update the price on a regular basis. There's a lot of labor that goes behind having to change the price every time the market changes. And for the most part, institutions, they're not looking for that. We set the price once a year and that's what they go with, unless something extraordinary happens and we have thousands of pounds of kale. Yeah, maybe we'll have a discount then. The only downside to institutions is they often have to get approval for their invoices through a board, and that can take months. So if you're going to go that route, you have to be prepared to carry the cash flow and realize that it could be 2 months before you get paid. So if you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, make sure that your financial strength is strong enough to hold that cash flow for a few months. You still got to pay your vendors. You still got to do that. So that's one of the downsides, but administration is much, much easier on the institution side. So I just wanted to add that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheri. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind going back on mute, I don't know why that static is there, but maybe if I don't maybe if you turn off your camera, it'll get a little bit better next time. But we'll let you know how that turns out for the next time you're talking. So I don't see any other questions, so I'll go back. And this one, I think a lot of it is touched on already, but just what advice you're getting to farmers, specifically farmers that are looking to add this into their business, so as they expand. So what advice would you give? And looking back, is there anything you would have done differently when you first added aggregation and distribution into your business?
I think I'm supposed to start, right, in the snake order here.
I think, yeah, whoever wants to go now with these
Okay.
questions, yeah.
Okay. I think the biggest question as a producer you have to ask yourself is why would you want to do it? You already have a lot on your plate as a producer. So that I think the biggest question would be why. And do you have, as you look around your landscape, so for instance, in my neck of the woods, there are a ton of Amish growers pretty darn close to me. And so, it logistically wise, it makes a lot of sense to get into the business because we have these customers that are easily accessible. I mean, I think the other thing to look at is there anybody else in your area already doing it? If they're already doing it, then maybe it's best to just see if you can become a part of their operation and organization. And if you have a particular set of skills that you want to utilize, that makes a bunch of sense. But, I think you're already producing, being a farmer. So unless you really are just young and full of energy and, you really just, this is something you really want to do. I think asking the why is probably the first thing. Why would you want to add another thing to yourself? But
And then anything you would have done differently, like when I think you've touched on things a little bit, but yeah, if there's just like an overall theme of what you might have done differently if you're doing it a second time.
Well, as a person doing it the second time,
Yeah.
there are a few things that I'm doing differently. I'm definitely well, one thing that happened to me, which was like kind of blew my mind, was that I grew way too fast. You know, I ended up, yes, sort of speaking to what Sheri was talking about. Like the business really took off, and I wasn't able to really keep up with the pace of of it expanding. So in my first year, I ran out of cooler space. That led me down the road of like trying to find a bigger cooler, which led me down the road of trying to get into a different spot, and which led me to the venture capitalists. So all these different things would happen so fast. Um, it didn't really allow me the chance to take it all in and decide, whether those were smart moves. I don't know if I would have made any different choices, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of like riding the wave, really. But this second time around, it feels a lot more like I can set the pace. I don't have like the venture capitalists anymore. I don't it's just a nice add-on to what I'm already doing. And I have, I just have the background and knowledge, and it's something I really like doing. And I have a bunch of these producers just right around me, and it's hard to not do it, because it just seems like it's a easy, not easy, but it's just like, it's just something I know. So I guess that's the biggest thing.
Thank you. If anybody else wants to go.
I could go. I don't feel like I have I mean, I agree with what they said, but also I guess what I would add is just that the smaller farmers, they when you're growing your farm and then you're also trying to aggregate, it's a benefit to the farm. You have this additional sales outlet, but it is important to grow slowly and grow the farmer's capacity along with it for doing wholesale, and what goes into that, how to think about it differently, I think getting projections is a big thing, accurate projections, so that you're not selling something and then the farm doesn't have it, or things like that are some of like the learning curve to starting out. But what is helpful is getting everyone on the same page, so that you can sell to these bigger, all in one place, or all in, a big place to sell is really good. Yeah.
All right, so we have question coming through the chat. So what % of sales are towards retail wholesale customers, and what % is direct to consumer? So we'll start there. And then is there an experience with a model that's like a fruit stand truck, which sets up in a designated spot time for general public to buy bulk? Thinking of delivering to a school, grocery store, and then advertising and setting up somewhere in community to sell direct as well. So a question on what % of sales are to retail or wholesale customers, and 1% to direct to consumer, and experience with a model like that.
100% of our sales go to the wholesale customer. We don't sell anything retail anymore. The time I would be spending at a farmer's market, I can just go find a new wholesale customer and sell probably 5 times as much. Farmers markets in my area are like $300 to $600 a market. Like $300 a market for 2 days worth of work in the growing is not worth it. But you got to get your name out there. What was the other part of that?
So experience with a model like a fruit stand truck sets up in a designated spot and then can be, move on from there?
I mean, I think someone who's not on this call, but who has a retail spot is Perfection Produce. And they do an amazing job of having a retail location and um and doing the wholesale. I mean, it's David Parr is his name. He is amazing. I've worked with him before in the past. I've known the guy for, man, probably 12, 15 years at this point, to be honest. He's taken his business from buying local to going all the way down to like Kentucky and getting watermelon, Georgia, I mean, all over the place, picking up product and having it at his retail location and selling it for cheap. I shouldn't say cheap. That's not fair. Selling it cost effectively. Like he still makes $1, but he still gives people a good deal. I think he's done an outstanding job of that. And I mean, I just looked at his Facebook this morning. I think he's got like 11,000 followers. So I mean, that is a great model of how to do it right. So if you want to know how to do it right, a retail spot, look at Perfection Produce. They are amazing.
I'm going to try this again. Am I still staticky?
No, it's better.
I moved to a new room here.
Thank you.
So like Shawn, we don't do any direct to consumer. We don't, we have one legacy retail little store and one chef. You were right. We follow chef. We have one chef we've been following. Everything else goes into the wholesale market, again, by choice. We just picked this side of the business and it's stable. And I would say too, most of you have farms you're running. And so in our little partnership, the two of us, I'm a retired businesswoman. I could afford to come in and run the paperwork and understand that there is paperwork. This is a business. And when you're trying to run that business from your tractor or your shed or your warehouse, it's really tough to do. So we split the duties, and Darren runs the logistics portion and I run the business portion. If you can find a way to partner with somebody, it will be well worth the time to find somebody to run the business. I would also say, like Rufus said, find somebody who is aggregating near you and doing a good job of it. And if you have a lot of small farms, you consider approaching them about becoming a hub for their aggregation business, where you can collect from the local farms and then drive that product in to the main aggregator. Let them handle the paperwork, right? They're already established. But if you can set yourself up as a hub in an existing aggregator business, you will get a ton of experience without carrying the load of the finances and the risk of the business. It's a great way to get started.
My apologies for the delay. I've been listening in. I'm Dion Washington with Arizona Community Hub. And this has just been so wonderful. And Sheri, thank you for saying that. I am a local aggregator based out of Arizona, and I represent a lot of Native tribes and BIPOC farmers that are growing, that are local. And we work with like food banks, churches, any institution, hopefully schools very soon, to get local food to Arizona. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And this has just been so fruitful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yep. Sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we do quite a bit of direct-to-consumer sales with our cooperative customizable CSA. So we do both CSA vegetable shares and meat shares. And so that definitely is a whole different beast that takes a lot more labor than the wholesale. So it's like, if you're going to do it, we actually have moved to, because now we're doing the distribution on it and have like the website for customizing. Just with all the expenses that it takes, you really have to be at more like a or we are at more like a 60% markup for that. And it is retail, so that makes sense. And it's, you know, a service for the customer. They get it delivered, they can customize their share. It's really like a online shop, you know, so we're close almost to having like a retail location, except that it's all online. You know, and we've definitely considered in the future getting a retail space. And I guess to answer the question, my perspective is that that would be a high chance of failure, I guess I would say. Like, I think that it's to have like a movable, everything I've heard from other people is that it hasn't worked, especially if you're like moving it to a different location that's not established for a high traffic of people, and they, you know, are less likely to go there. That's why a farmer, if anything, what you're talking about is like getting a farmer's market stand for the cooperative or for your aggregation. And you know, you have to have a farmer's market that will allow that, because a lot of times they only allow for single farm stands. And so, yeah, we considered that, but my farm that that I co-own does about a third of our sales at farmers market, a third through the CSA, and then a third through wholesale, which that's 3/4 that are all through the Slow Farmers Co-op, and then a third to farmers market separately from that. And that creates kind of a good, stable set of outlets, I think, that that also helps with getting rid of all of our products. So if it doesn't go to one, it can go to the other. And then, you know, the other third option is like the farmer's market for everything that didn't sell wholesale or CSA. So that helps it, the farm, to be stable. And I think, yeah, all around, I would just, yeah, I've just not heard of like a mobile market working out, but maybe someone else has an example of that. But also, Shawn, I would like to maybe get that person's contact to talk about how they're doing so well with the retail. Yeah, that'd be good to hear.
So we operate probably about a 60-40, 60 to wholesale, 40% direct to consumer. And I my guess would be that the wholesale is going to increase, you know, to maybe it'll end up being 80-20 over the next couple years. We don't do any farmers markets. Haven't done farmers market. Well, I've tried every once in a while, but I always found the farmers markets to be, just exactly like Shawn said. I mean, you're, in my opinion, you're much better off spending that time trying to find a wholesale buyer who will buy your stuff. And, you know, the nice thing about aggregation and distribution and having customers, wholesale customers, is that you know your product is sold, as opposed to the farmer's market where you put all that work into, you know, building your beautiful stand, and maybe it rains that day, and boy, that's disappointing. And we were always very lucky to have wholesale customers. Lucky / that's what we worked on, you know. And so I don't know. I think farmers markets can be good if you're just starting, getting your name out, but you could also spend that Saturday cold calling a bunch of different people, and who knows, maybe you get at least one customer, and that might be time better spent. I don't know. It depends on where you live, but like around us, yeah, I mean, boy, when I went to farmers markets, maybe I'd make $100, and meanwhile I'd have a truck, you know, an 8 or 10 pallet truck running up to the Twin Cities that was like $10,000, you know, and you're like, God, why am I spending all this time just hanging out, you know, at the farmer's market when I could be doing something else? So
I'd like to build off that a little bit, because I think a few of you have mentioned it so far, but how do you have strategies of finding wholesale markets and, you know, those wholesale customers? You know, you mentioned cold calling. Is there any other like strategies between what you're looking for, or how you're identifying those? And then another question would be too, then how do you find farmers? Like, how do you find those farmers that are ready to provide wholesale quantities to you, and for it to make sense for their business as well?
I guess I'll just keep going since I'm unmuted here. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately somewhat that cold calling is the deal. I mean, I think you have to just keep going to all these different meetings, be a part of groups, be a part of garden groups, you really have to be a salesperson. And that's where it can be advantageous to partner up with some of these existing aggregation hubs, because they're already doing all that work, and especially if you're first getting started. Like my journey again was I drove for another farm, and so I was dropping produce off at the different places, and so I was meeting all the buyers and getting to know them and telling them my story. And I personally I don't consider myself a salesperson. I don't know if you guys were ever part of like your music clubs or something. You had to sell magazines or candy bars or whatever. I hated doing that stuff. Um, but I do think that we're in this unique business where we've got if you got some beautiful product that you're producing, and you believe in it, that's a part of it. But you do have to just like the old adage. I mean, you have to take your lumps. You have to be okay with people saying no to you. Um, but eventually, like for instance, the way I got into the Viroqua Food Co-op, for instance, okay, I went to the buyer at the Viroqua Food Co-op at the time, and I had a great spiel and we had a great conversation. And about 5 minutes into it, she's like, I'm really sorry. I already deal with 50 producers. I can't take on any other producers. And that was like kind of a big bummer because I felt like they were going to be a good customer. But eventually I don't know, I just got her email, and eventually I just kept sending her availability lists, and finally I had something on my list that she wasn't getting from somebody else. And so then I got my foot in the door. And I think oftentimes like these big companies, Cisco, whatever, that's what they do. They have their salespeople come into a place, maybe they're not doing business with that place, but they have something on their list that the customer isn't getting yet, and they find their way in. And you have to put the boots on the ground, I guess, is kind of the way to do it. Was there anything else in that question I was missing?
I guess how you find farmers too, find farmers that are a good fit for selling to you.
Yeah, that's a great part of it too, because I think I mean, you definitely want to align yourself with people who want to grow food. And if you can get a couple farmers that are really professional, like they understand that they can't pack a box full of crap, like that, it has to look good, it has to meet the standards that you set forth. I thought what the Wisconsin Food Hub had this winter was great, like a real standardized booklet of like, here's what we're looking for. Organic Valley does the same thing with their produce pool. They have a really like standardized, here's what we're looking for kind of thing. And as soon as you make a contact with the producer that can give you the things you want when you need them, they're always packed, they look good. Boy, you do whatever you can to hold on to that person. And then as you're bringing on new producers, do it with caution, do it slowly, have them grow just one thing, maybe one or two things for you, see how they do with that, with handling that, product. And if they do a great job, then you can expand that relationship. But yeah, you need them. They need to be able to produce what the market's asking for, and maybe not be. We certainly had some cantankerous farmers here and there that we dealt with that were like, I don't know, they could take a lot of time too. So you have to be really conscious of, I mean, a lot of the farmers are wonderful, and so yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I'll put a plug in for the Wisconsin School Nutrition Association's got their conference coming up in La Crosse here at the end of the month. If you're looking to get into the school market, it's a great place to go. It's a great place to get your name out there. And again, don't be afraid to contact other aggregators who are already working in the line of business that you're looking to enter. It would be great if all the aggregators in the state kind of put aside the competition and really helped each other. There's room in this state for a lot more aggregators than we have, and we're spread out enough that we can all make a decent business and still share good policy, good procedure, and cross sell. There's no reason we couldn't be cross selling, especially, Shawn's running long trucks. I know, if we needed to get down to Milwaukee, Wisconsin Food Hub is a great resource. So look for the customers in the areas that those customers are going to gather. And as far as the farms, word of mouth has been our absolute very best way to get new farms, and give them some incentives. If you have not heard of the Wholesale Success book, I think, Tay, do you have access to offering that book still?
I found a link to a PDF of one of the
Mhm.
editions. I forget which edition it is, but yeah, I know we shared that with our LFPA producers.
Yeah, the Wholesale Success book. I think the cost, we paid, I think 90 a copy, but I think it's down to like 70. It's something we purchased in bulk and we gave to all of our farms. It did the work of us doing some standards training. It has everything they need to know, and it's an investment. And that kind of relationship building is what's gotten us, the neighbor farm is raising eggs and this neighbor has got corn. All right, fine, get together and one of you drive it in, right? Keep the food miles low. And it's been a very effective tool for us to grow our vendor base.
Nice. Yeah, and Valerie put that link in. That was the one I was thinking of that the PDF is available for. So for anybody who wants to check that out, it is a really great resource. And then Heather, I think I saw you come unmuted for that question. And then I
Oh
do
yeah.
see we have one in the chat as well, if that would be up next.
Yeah, I agree with what was already said. That definitely is relevant for me as well. And I would just say I wouldn't consider myself a great salesperson, and but I am better with the relationship building, and I do think that is a really good way to go, and leads to more of this interconnectedness, building the local food network. And it's exciting to see like what has come out of that and what can still continue to grow from that, because it's bigger. We're talking bigger things that we're even as aggregators contributing to. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of the continuing to go back to them, and also, yeah, just sending your availability to people, even if they haven't ordered from you. That definitely can pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. Thank you. So a question that came through the chat was any tips for giving feedback to producers you really want to work with, but they don't quite meet your quality standards?
Be honest, be upfront, and don't just like, oh, your produce isn't clean. It needs to be clean. Like don't talk down to people. Like, be open and honest, but also provide possible solutions. And like, I think all four of us have continuously said, it's about building relationships. It's about a relationship. This isn't, you know, you're not good enough for us, we're not going to work with you. It's how can we get you to a place where we can work together? What resources are out there? Like I listed DECAT produce safety. I mean, we just got the link to the wholesale book. There are resources out there to help people get to the place they need to be. And if you're looking to provide this resource to a lot of folks, apply for a grant to do the work to pay you. If you have that resource, apply for a grant to pay you to do the work. That would be my feedback or my tip to giving feedback. Just build a relationship.
So, thanks, Shawn.
You can also ask them to come in on your aggregation day or days, come in and help, volunteer to help for that day, to see the process in action, see how the other produce is coming in, how it's packaged, how it's labeled. It will be invaluable for them to see how the other farms are doing this. I mean, verbal feedback is great, and you need to do that, but give them an opportunity to get some hands-on experience with you.
It's a great tip.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, go ahead, Heather. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna echo that. Yeah, we've definitely done that as well as, yeah, just see it in action.
I just wanted to say too, I kind of forgot about that, the wholesale success book. That we used that quite a bit too back in the day. It was it is a great resource. It really is. I would definitely agree with Sheri. Like if you can get copies of that and give that out to your producers. And like Shawn said, it is, you are definitely setting up a relationship, and I think kindness can rule the day for sure. It can be overwhelming to for that farmer to get their first sale, and it's really exciting. And on the flip side of it, it's really I found, when we had to reject produce or we had to send produce back, that was probably the hardest, most painful thing to do, because as a producer, as a grower, I know how much work goes into packing all those cases. And so hopefully, hopefully there's something really clear cut that you can do that comparison, and to say like, okay, here's where we went wrong. And hopefully that grower can receive that information. And to be honest too, though, like if a producer, is habitually, we definitely had some habitual producers that were challenging. And I think earlier in my career of aggregation, I was hesitant to nip them in the butt, because I just really wanted that relationship. But I think you do also, you have to, as an aggregator, maybe if you are a farmer and you're also aggregating, you have to take off your farmer hat, put on your aggregator hat, and say, look, you either have to bring in the product the way that we need it, or we can't do it, because you just, once the ball is rolling, there's just so little time to really spend with producers. But I had a guy out in the field all the time. He would go to, especially if we had new producers, he'd spend more time at those places, sometimes helping them pack, like making sure they had the right packaging. And I think Sheri's point about bringing them into your operation to see what you do on your end for the aggregation part, I think that's super duper helpful too, because oftentimes there's that separation. It's like you're the sales guy, we're out here slaving away, and you're just like on your computer selling stuff. And it's like you have to be a team. But yeah, I mean, when you do, because if you do get a relationship with a new producer and you really hit it off well, I mean, that can be one of your best partnerships you can have, really.
I have a question.
Sure. Yep.
So do you aggregate and so do farmers come to you with like their produce that's dirty or their meat that's unprocessed, and like how much of aggregation do you do, and do you pass those costs off to the buyer, or do you embed that into the cost of the final sale? I think as a small aggregator that's only been doing this for 5 years, some of my buyers want it to be like spelled out, the cost of food, the cost of aggregation, and then the cost of transportation of getting it there from point A to B. And then some are like, I don't care, tell me what it's just gonna cost, the bottom line. And I just would like to know what you think about that.
I mean, if a grower brings in dirty produce and I have to handle it, yeah, they're gonna get less for it because they didn't do the work. For example, we got asparagus in cardboard boxes. I was like, hey, this is great, but it's gonna cost you $5 a case for me to put it in a wax box. So do you want to just put it in a wax box, or do you want to pay me $5 a case? And we don't process meat, so like that would be done at the butcher. But yeah, I mean, you bring in a bin of sweet corn, and I asked for 5 48 count cases. That's going to cost the grower money because it now costs me money. I pass that on. I don't absorb the negligence. It's not the best word, but I'm not going to absorb the cost of growers not doing what they're supposed to. I would be out of business.
Thank you for saying that, because I work with small farmers, and to your point, Rufus, you want to help them, right? As aggregators, you want to be there for them, but at the same time, how much is it costing us as a hub and as aggregators? And I'm sorry, did I hear somebody say 60%? Like, that's insane if that's like what the cost, I think Heather, you were referencing that. I'll be transparent. Our aggregation fee is only 12%. And that we give that to the buyer every time. And that's no matter if it's a hospital, if it's 1.5 million, or if it's $100,000 contract. And I just would like to know, is there an industry standard for aggregation percentages, whether you're putting it in the food or not?
Yeah, I'll respond. That 60% is specifically for our CSA, right? So that's direct to consumer. That's the cost of running the online software and packing the boxes. And so there's a lot more that goes into it. And so our wholesale price is more like 20%. So it does differ between the two. We don't have a lot of different designated markups. Those are the main two. But yeah, to kind of echo what Shawn was saying, we have a standard that we tell our producers what we want the product to come in as, and that's clean and in the boxes they need to be. And yeah, we don't accept it if it's not that way, unless, we do talk to, there are certain producers that maybe don't have facilities to do certain things. So we will sometimes say, yeah, we'll give you a little bit less for it, than us to do the work of bringing it to the point of where it needs to go to the customer. That never gets put onto the customer. It's always, on the farmer to either get less for it if it's not at that point, or get it to the point where it needs to be.
Thank you. That's a great way of explaining it, though, because I think as a small farmer, I'm like, well, why the hell would you charge me for this? I can do it myself. A lot of reasons. You're not putting it together and getting it there and putting it in the van and getting it to St. Mary's Sweet Bank. So thank you, Heather, Rufus, and Shawn. I appreciate it.
All right, another question that came through the chat. What are the biggest barriers you find that farmers face when trying to get into wholesale markets or selling to you?
I think it's everything we just said. Like, the barriers are not bringing stuff in, not having the knowledge, not understanding what I put in the chat the good acre, like, visual size standards, not understanding that. And then whoever put the wholesale stuff in there, link, all those are the barriers. And then patience. I think not having patience is a barrier. And I think I'm pretty similar to everyone else that spoke about not being a salesperson. I am not a salesman. I do have to cold call people. I do send emails. I send them Facebook Messenger. I put people, once I get their email, I'll put them on our weekly email list. Like, myself, I'm a barrier to entering wholesale markets. But you need to be able to recognize those things and work through them. I mean, yeah, it's tough. What other barriers? I mean, I think that's most of them that I've found.
depending on how far away they are from the hub or the distribution center, it's just being able to have enough product available to make that trip, that round trip, profitable for you. And we do have a policy at Seasonal Harvest where we fill our orders. So when we sell, our customers don't know where that product is coming from. We take the aggregated order and then we deaggregate, if you will. And our policy is to fill the smallest farms first so that they're getting enough product out of these orders to make that trip profitable, or we find another farm who's already coming in, pair them up, and time and money, to distribute. So having enough product available to work in a wholesale is part of the challenge. And finding an aggregator that doesn't mind if you have 5 pounds available, it's more work for us, but it's a way for them to get started. So we don't have a minimum amount of product they have to get started with. We just ask them to make sure they're being profitable.
Yeah, I think that that having enough product is the big deal because, I mean, if you're only, if you do land a customer and then you have to continue to short them, which means you can't fulfill the order for one reason or another, or the whole order or whatever, you are going to probably end up losing that customer. And so I think that's what kind of speaks volumes to working with an aggregator, because then now the aggregator is bringing it in from a bunch of different places and has the ability to fill the order as opposed to just an individual farm trying to fill that order. That was kind of one of the other reasons why we went to the aggregation model, was that, we witnessing this other farm I had worked for go out of business because of flooding or whatever. It's like, man, if you could centralize that production into a number of different valleys, then, you still have your customer without, even though you lost production on that one farm, at least you still have your customer base. And I want to just go back real quick to the question about percentages too. I think, when I ended up, trying to work on about a 40% markup, I think, like nowadays it's more like 20%, but that's because I'm working with other aggregators, Amish aggregators in my area. And I think like the two that I work with, I think are more around like 15%, 20, somewhere around that 12 to 15%. So when I buy from that aggregator, then I'm putting on another 15%. So, every organization that product runs through has to put on some sort of percentage. So the closer you can get to the producer is probably better. But, like the aggregators I work with in the Amish community, they have phones, they have big coolers, they have loading docks, so they kind of do all that work we used to do in-house of like running to individual farms to find out how they're doing with their, so to me, that percentage that I have to pay him is definitely well worth it. But I think, it's potentially a real challenge to underfund yourself. And I know, I deeply know what like Sheri and Shawn and Heather, everybody, we're all doing this to get more money back to our neighbor farmers and ourselves. And so there's that duality of like, you really want to do good and right by your producers, but you have to make money doing it. Otherwise, like as I found, I lost my business, I lost out eventually because I wasn't making enough money. And I really, in my heart of hearts, I wish I would have done what Sheri's doing and just been, not so gung-ho, but I was young and dumb. And so I thought I was really like, I was gunning for, maybe $20 million worth of business or so. I don't know what, I didn't really know what the upper limit was, but, I grew really fast. And so it was kind of hard to, stop myself from growing or whatever. But if you can keep your expenses super low and you can work within that slow churn of life, that then you can keep your percentages low as well. And I remember meeting with a couple of my organic or my Amish growers, and they had some really great advice, but I felt like I was too far down the road to take it. And it was all about like, working out of the barn that makes sense. It's like it was that austerity of being small and just, working with what you have. And I couldn't hear that one at that time. So
Thank you. Another question in the chat is, what food safety monitoring or policies do you have for your suppliers or producers?
I think I mentioned a little bit about food safety earlier, where we work with the farms to get them to that level. So, like for me, not only, I've even been to Rufus's farm when I was at DACAP.
that's
But
funny,
I
Shawn.
remember,
I was gonna ask you if you were my inspector for the practicum, right?
yeah, I
Yeah, that's
did
what I
come,
thought.
yeah.
Okay.
So I've been on a lot of farms, and even today, like, well, not today, but the previous weeks, I was out tilling gardens for farms that I work with. So I see their pack shed. When we pick up produce, we look around for things like, oh, is this on a pallet? When you get produce in, is it dirty? Is the box clean? If we get in dirty stuff, we have to wash it. If a box is dirty, we have to clean it or put it in a different box. Our buyers generally don't want to experience some of the things that we experience with dealing with growers. So that is just a daily part of what we do. We make sure produce is clean. We make sure it's fresh. We make sure it's harvested relatively recently. Um, you don't want a bin of cantaloupe that has half rotten, because if half of them are rotten, the other half is going to be rotten in 2 days. So, those are all things we're looking for on a regular basis as we bring produce in, as we get produce out. And, it's like I go to not as many farms as I used to, but I do get on farm a lot, and we got a driver now. So yay, we're finally in the big world. But it's my buddy Dan, and like I talked to him, I'm like, hey, like, how's things going? Like, I keep that conversation open with him, and he's not trained in food safety. He hasn't been through 4 years of FDA training on food safety. So I share my knowledge with him, so he is empowered to say, no, we can't take this. This is not up to par. So I make sure he has the resources needed to, feel comfortable with taking produce in, because we don't generally store produce. We pick it up and drop it off that same day or that next morning. Like if Dan goes and does a route, on the way home, he'll pick produce up, and that's getting delivered the next day. Um, so we can be as efficient as we possibly can. But food safety is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a question. So is anybody requiring farms to be GAP certified? Yeah, and that's a no from everybody. Heather did have to drop off. She lost connection and then had to run to something else. So we did lose her, but they're not requiring GAP certification, I know, for their co-op as well. So
And I have to jump off as well. We do not require that, but I just wanted to say this is one of the best meetings that we've had from an aggregator perspective. Shawn, we've been trying to do this for a couple of years now, and I have a great deal of respect. We all have different models. We all have this same vision, and we're all focused on the same goals. And so
yeah.
thanks for letting me be a part of that. And please reach out to your local aggregator if you have questions. We're all willing to help.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
thanks again, Tay.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
Sheri,
it.
for being there. It was great.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there's any, I think, final questions, otherwise, I'll watch for them into the chat. But really want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Rufus, Shawn, Heather, and Sheri for all their expertise and for being, you know, brutally honest about what it takes to do this. I think it's really important, and you know, it's really important work that you all are doing, and it makes a big difference to the farmers. And thank you for doing the work, and hope you can continue to do it for a long time. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
We enjoy it. It's part of the
Yeah.
job.
I will send out a email with an evaluation, hoping to get that out tomorrow, but it might be probably into next week. And then in there, I'm going to put some information about the Egg Solidarity Network. I'd love to see a group on the Egg Solidarity Network just about aggregation and distribution. Keep up these conversations. I think it's super important. So I'll put a link in there and an explanation about what that is. So yeah, does anybody have any final questions?
I'll just reiterate what Shawn said. I really appreciate the other aggregators' perspective. I feel like I learned something today already just from those guys. So yeah, I mean, reach out to all of us. I think, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm always looking to do more business and make more friends in the food world for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, if
So
it's all right with everybody, I'll put your contact information in that follow-up email.
yeah, you bet.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and hope the sun is shining. You can get outside for a little bit here. All right. Take care.